Awakening in an alien world. The sharp, sterile light pierced Jason's eyelids, dragging him from the depths of unconsciousness. A throbbing headache pulsed at his temples, and his body felt heavy, as if each limb were bound by an unseen force. As he slowly forced his eyes open, a wave of confusion washed over him. The surroundings were unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Polished metallic walls adorned with strange, glowing symbols flickered gently, casting an ethereal light around the room. The air smelled oddly sterile, almost like antiseptic mixed with a faint hint of something floral. With great effort, Jason pushed himself into a sitting position, though his muscles protested vehemently. "What the hell is this place?" he muttered under his breath, his voice hoarse and unfamiliar in the echoing silence. Panic fluttered at the edge of his mind, threatening to consume him. He tried to recall how he ended up here, but all that came to mind was the mundane routine of his drive home from work, the radio droning on in the background, and then nothing. Before he could spiral into further panic, the soft whir of machinery caught his attention. A figure stood at the edge of the room, her back turned to him, tall and slender with a shimmering emerald green hue to her skin. As she studied a hovering holographic display, Jason blinked in disbelief, wondering if his mind was playing tricks on him. This couldn't be real. An alien, futuristic technology? Yet everything felt too vivid to be a mere dream. The woman turned, her glowing cap-like eyes locking onto Jason's. She took a step forward, her expression a mixture of curiosity and mild suspicion. "You're awake sooner than expected," she said, her voice smooth yet laced with authority. Jason's heart raced. He recognized that form. It was eerily similar to characters he'd read about in countless sci-fi novels. You're not human," he finally managed to mutter, more to himself than to her. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing his words. "Observant, aren't we?" she replied dryly, glancing back at her holographic display. "I am Nurse Zala of the Elkin species. You're on Medbay Station C-13, orbiting a sector of Proxima. You were found unconscious in a damaged escape pod, badly injured." Jason swallowed hard. Proxima. This wasn't possible. The clarity of the room, the sterile smell of the air, and the soft hum of distant machines made everything feel too real. He glanced down at his body and noticed he was wearing a thin medical gown, its fabric cool against his skin. Nurse Zala stepped closer, her gaze flicking between the data on the hologram and his face. "You're healing faster than expected," she noted, almost more to herself than to Jason. "I expected at least another hour of sedation. Your physiology is peculiar." "Peculiar," Jason echoed, trying to piece together the scattered fragments of his thoughts. "What happened to me?" She didn't answer immediately, instead walking to a nearby console and typing in more data. "Your regeneration rate is unusually high for a human," she finally said, her voice carrying an undertone of fascination. "That's not normal for your species." Jason couldn't help but let out a shaky laugh. "Well, I'm glad I'm an interesting case," he quipped, though the humor felt forced. His mind raced with questions. How had he ended up here? Why was his body responding so strangely? As he shifted on the bed, swinging his legs over the side, he noticed something odd. His hand brushed against a small metallic device attached to his forearm. Alarmed, he asked, "What the hell is this?" Nurse Zala's gaze snapped to the device. "It's part of the medical evaluation process," she explained, though her tone shifted, a sudden edge creeping into her voice. "Don't touch it. We're not done with the examination." Ignoring her warning, Jason attempted to pull the device off, curiosity and anxiety battling within him. But before he could do anything more, the metallic instrument beeped, emitting a low hum that vibrated through his bones. In an instant, a surge of energy coursed through his body, causing him to collapse back onto the bed. "Stop." Nurse Zola's voice was sharp as she rushed toward him, her fingers flying over the control panel near the bed. The humming stopped as quickly as it started, leaving Jason gasping for breath, his head spinning from the sudden shock. You don't understand what you're dealing with, she snapped, her usually calm demeanor fracturing. That instrument is crucial for your survival right now. Remove it, and your body could go into complete shutdown. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. What do you mean crucial? What the hell did you do to me? She hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering with something that resembled guilt before quickly masking her emotions again. You were dying when we found you, she said quietly. Your injuries were severe, internal damage, radiation exposure. We had to use advanced methods to stabilize you. The device is monitoring your regeneration. A cold chill crept over Jason as he clenched his fists. He didn't trust her. He didn't trust any of this. But deep down, he knew he didn't have much of a choice. The alien nurse had saved his life for now. Silence settled between them, and Jason's mind raced with possibilities. How had he gotten so far from Earth? What had happened to him during the time he couldn't remember? And most importantly, what exactly was that strange instrument strapped to his arm, and why was his body changing in ways he couldn't understand? Before Jason could voice any more questions, the room suddenly shook, a deep rumble reverberating through the walls. The holographic display flickered and dimmed, and alarms blared in the distance. Nurse Zola's eyes widened, her expression shifting from irritation to genuine concern. Something's wrong, she murmured, more to herself than to Jason. Jason sat up, adrenaline kicking in as the rumbling grew louder. What now? He asked, his voice barely audible over the deafening noise. Zola turned toward the door, her eyes narrowing. We're under attack. Who's attacking? Jason demanded, his mind racing. Zola's face remained tense, her sharp green eyes flicking toward the door as if expecting something, or someone, to burst through. We're in a neutral station, she muttered, almost as if talking to herself. But that doesn't mean we're safe from every threat in the galaxy. Jason swung his legs off the bed, staggering to his feet, despite the dizziness that tried to pull him back down. His heart raced, and his mind reeled with too many questions. Before he could say anything more, a loud explosion echoed from somewhere deeper in the station, followed by the metallic groaning of walls under pressure. Zola moved swiftly, grabbing a small device from a compartment and strapping it to her wrist. We need to move, she commanded, urgency lacing her tone. Jason nodded, following her lead. Whatever was happening, it wasn't good, and staying here wouldn't make things any better. The station lurched again as they exited the med bay, its dim corridors now bathed in a flashing red light. Panic surged through him as personnel rushed past them, some carrying equipment, others looking disoriented and frightened. Stay close to me, whatever happens, Zala instructed, her voice firm. As they rounded a corner, the ceiling above them shook violently. Dust and debris rained down, forcing both of them to stop. Zola pressed herself against the wall, her eyes scanning the corridor ahead. Jason gritted his teeth, feeling the cold metal of the strange instrument still strapped to his forearm. Something told him this attack was just the beginning of a much larger problem. The chaos intensified as they pressed forward, Jason's heart pounding in sync with the station's violent tremors. He kept pace with Zala, a flicker of determination igniting within him. If he was going to survive this, he needed to understand why he was really here and what part he had to play in this unfolding drama. Just then, Zala halted, motioning for Jason to duck into a narrow alcove. He squeezed into the cramped space, pressing his back against the cold metal walls. As another explosion reverberated through the station, she glanced around, making sure they weren't followed. You're more perceptive than I thought, she said in a low voice, almost drowned out by the chaos outside. No, this isn't just about supplies. We've been hiding something valuable. I think they know. Jason swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle in the pit of his stomach. What do you mean? What's so valuable that they'd risk attacking the neutral station? Zala's gaze flickered to the device on his forearm, her lips pressed into a thin line. That instrument you showed me during the examination, it's not just some random tech. It's a key, a key to something ancient and powerful hidden in this sector of the galaxy, and now it's in your hands. Jason looked down at the sleek metal strapped to his arm, pulsing softly as if alive. His breath caught in his throat. "What are you saying? Why me?" "I don't know why you," Zola admitted, her green eyes narrowing with suspicion. "But whatever this is, it's bigger than both of us. Someone wants that key badly. That's why the attack. They're after it." Jason's mind spun. A key? Ancient power? He hadn't signed up for this. One minute he was on Earth, the next he was aboard an alien station under attack. None of it made sense. "If they want this key so badly, why don't we just give it to them?" Jason asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Zala shook her head, her expression serious. "It's not that simple. If they get their hands on whatever that key unlocks, they'll have the power to control entire star systems, or worse. We can't let that happen." Jason let out a sharp breath, the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. "So what do we do?" "We fight," Zala said, her tone unwavering. "But first, we need to get to the control center. If we can regain control of the station, we might stand a chance. Otherwise, this place will be nothing more than floating debris." Jason nodded, his stomach twisting with nerves. He had no idea how to fight, let alone in a situation like this, but something told him that running wasn't an option, not anymore. As they prepared to leave the safety of their alcove, Jason realized that the choices he made from here on would not only determine his fate, but potentially the fate of the galaxy itself. Into the heart of danger, with adrenaline coursing through his veins, Jason followed Nurse Zala as they navigated the chaotic corridors of Med Bay Station C-13. The alarms blared relentlessly, red lights flashing ominously as they sprinted toward the control center. Each step reverberated in his mind, reminding him that time was running out. He couldn't shake the feeling that every moment they spent in the open brought them closer to peril. "Keep your head down," Zola commanded, her voice cutting through the cacophony of chaos around them. Jason ducked instinctively, pressing himself against the cool, metallic wall as they rounded another corner. The station shook violently under the strain of distant explosions, sending vibrations through the floors and walls that made Jason's heart race even faster. They entered a wider hallway bustling with activity. Alien personnel scurried past, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. Jason caught a glimpse of a group of Elkin engineers, their green skin glistening under the harsh lights, working furiously to reroute power to the station's defenses. He felt a pang of admiration. Despite the danger, they remained committed to their mission. "What's our plan once we reach the control center?" Jason asked, trying to keep his voice steady amid the panic. Zala glanced back at him, her eyes narrowing with focus. "Once we're inside, we'll need to access the main terminal. I can override the lockdown protocols and reactivate the station's defense systems. If we can restore power to the shields, we might hold them off long enough to figure out our next move." Jason nodded, but uncertainty gnawed at him. What if we can't? What if they breach the control center before we can secure it? A grim smile flickered across Zola's face, a hint of reassurance amid the chaos. "Then we'll improvise. Humans are good at that, aren't they?" Jason couldn't help but chuckle, despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "Yeah, I guess we are." He felt a strange sense of camaraderie forming between them. Maybe, just maybe, they could survive this ordeal together. As they approached the control center, the corridor widened, revealing a massive set of reinforced doors. Zola approached a control panel beside the entrance, her fingers flying over the buttons as she entered a sequence of codes. The doors slid open with a deep rumble, revealing a large room filled with holographic displays and communication panels. Inside, chaos reigned. Several alien officers were already at their stations, barking orders as they monitored the unfolding situation. Holographic screens displayed live feeds of the station's exterior, showing waves of pirate ships swarming toward them like vultures drawn to a carcass. "Captain," one of the officers called out, noticing Zala's arrival. We've lost contact with Deck 4. The invaders are breaching faster than we anticipated. Zola's face hardened. Get the shields back online now. We can't let them reach the core. Her authoritative tone cut through the panic in the room, and the officers snapped into action. Jason stepped further into the control center, feeling the weight of the situation settle heavily on his shoulders. He glanced around at the frantic activity, the sense of desperation hanging thick in the air. He knew nothing about battle strategies or alien technology, but he felt a strange sense of purpose brewing within him. The key strapped to his arm was central to everything happening around him, and for the first time, he felt the gravity of that responsibility. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the corridor behind them. The doors trembled as something, or someone, attempted to force their way inside. The control center personnel drew their weapons, faces grim with determination. "They're here," Zola said, her voice low but steady. She grabbed a blaster from a nearby weapons rack and tossed one to Jason. He caught it, feeling its unfamiliar weight in his hands. "I've never used one of these," Jason admitted, glancing nervously at the weapon. "Point and shoot," Zola replied, a fierce glint in her eyes. "Let's hope you don't need more than that." As the door buckled under the pressure of the attack, Jason's heart raced. Time seemed to slow down as chaos unfolded around him. The invaders, a mix of alien mercenaries and heavily armed pirates, poured into the control center, their eyes cold and calculating. "Hold the line," Zola shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. Jason's grip tightened around the blaster, his pulse hammering in his ears. He felt the instinctual urge to flee, but something in him stirred, a drive he didn't know he had. He raised the blaster, aimed shakily at the nearest pirate, and squeezed the trigger. A bright burst of energy shot from the barrel, striking the target in the chest. The pirate crumpled to the floor, and for a split second, Jason felt a surge of triumph. "Focus," Zola barked, firing at a group of invaders attempting to breach the main console. "Don't think, just shoot." Jason didn't need to be told twice. He fired again, the recoil jolting through his arm as he struggled to stay steady. Each shot seemed to find its mark, and a strange confidence welled up inside him, fueled by the energy coursing from the device on his arm. It pulsed in rhythm with the chaos, as if responding to the battle around him. Minutes felt like hours as the fight raged on. Zola moved with precision, coordinating the defense with sharp commands, her focus never wavering. Jason found himself falling into a rhythm, each pull of the trigger growing more assured. The station's defenders fought fiercely, but the pirates were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Suddenly, an enemy broke through the defensive line, charging directly at Jason with a blade drawn. Panic surged, and he raised his blaster, but it was too late. The pirate swung the blade, aiming for Jason's chest. Just as the weapon was about to connect, the device on Jason's arm flared with a blinding light. An invisible force erupted from it, throwing the pirate backward with a violent surge of energy. Jason staggered back, his breath catching in his throat as he stared at the glowing instrument. Zola's eyes widened as she glanced at him. "What the hell was that?" I don't know," Jason panted, still reeling from the shock. "The device, it just..." Zola cut him off, firing at another group of invaders. "We need to clear this room first." Jason nodded, pushing down the panic swirling in his gut. He couldn't afford to freeze now. More pirates were closing in, weapons drawn, but he felt a strange sense of determination rising within him. He aimed again, firing with newfound purpose as the energy from the device continued to buzz through him. The tide of battle began to shift. One by one, the pirates fell, their advance halted by the defenders' fierce resistance. Zola moved with deadly efficiency, each shot precise and purposeful. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the invaders dropped, leaving the room in silence, save for the crackle of damaged consoles and the groans of injured personnel. Jason lowered his blaster, chest heaving as he surveyed the aftermath. We did it, he muttered, half in disbelief. For now, Zola replied, wiping sweat from her brow. But they'll be back. We need to figure out our next move, and fast. Jason glanced down at the device on his arm, realizing it was more than just a key. This thing, he said, his voice shaking slightly, it's not just a key, is it? It's something more. Zala approached him, her gaze lingering on the device. It's a weapon, and from the looks of it, a powerful one. Jason swallowed hard, the implications of her words sinking in. He didn't want to think about the kind of power this thing held, or what it could mean if it fell into the wrong hands. Why me? He asked again, more to himself than to Zala. Why am I the one carrying this? Before Zala could respond, her room's main console lit up with a series of urgent alerts. One of the remaining officers rushed to the screen, his face pale. "Captain," he said, his voice tense, "we're detecting another wave of ships. Bigger this time, heavily armed." Zola cursed under her breath. "They're not giving up. They know what we have." Jason's stomach twisted at the gravity of her words. What do we do now? Zala's jaw tightened. We can't hold them off forever. Our only chance is to get off this station and get the key as far away from here as possible. Jason's eyes widened. "But you said the station." "I know what I said," Zola interrupted, her tone firm. "But if we stay, we'll be overrun. They're after that device, and they'll stop at nothing to get it." Jason nodded, swallowing his fear. The idea of abandoning the station terrified him, but deep down he knew Zala was right. The invaders were relentless, and the device on his arm was too dangerous to let fall into their hands. Zala turned to the remaining crew. "Prepare for evacuation. We're taking the shuttle." The officers nodded, immediately setting to work. Jason followed Zala toward the exit, his mind racing with the whirlwind of events. Everything was happening too fast. He barely had time to process one disaster before another hit. But deep down, he knew there was no turning back. He was part of this now, whether he wanted to be or not. As they reached the corridor leading to the shuttle bay, Zala glanced at him. "Listen, Jason, whatever happens next, you need to understand something. This device, it's not just a key to ancient power, it's a responsibility. One that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy." Jason stared at her, the weight of her words pressing heavily on his shoulders. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," Zala replied softly. "But sometimes we don't get to choose our role in the story. We just have to live with it." Before Jason could respond, a loud explosion shook the station once more. The walls trembled, and alarms blared to life as the invaders' next wave arrived. "Come on," Zala shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him forward. "We don't have much time." With his heart pounding, Jason forced himself to move. The corridor was blurred around him as they raced toward the shuttle bay, the chaos outside blending into a single pulse of urgency. He had no idea what awaited them, but one thing was clear. His life had changed forever, and the fight for survival was only just beginning. The escape plan. As Jason and Zala sprinted through the dimly lit corridors of Med Bay Station C-13, the chaos around them intensified. The walls vibrated with the tremors of explosions, and the blaring alarms echoed like a war drum, urging them to hurry. The air felt charged with tension, and every footfall resonated with the knowledge that danger was closing in. "Stay close," Zola called out, her voice cutting through the din. They rounded another corner, and Jason could see the shuttle bay entrance looming ahead, bathed in the harsh glow of emergency lighting. But his heart sank as he caught sight of the chaos unfolding inside. Personnel rushed back and forth, panic etched on their faces. The bay doors were partially sealed, a defense mechanism against the invaders, and the space was filling up with debris and the unmistakable smell of burnt electronics. "Zala, what's happening?" Jason shouted, feeling a sense of dread wash over him. "It's a full evacuation," Zala replied, scanning the scene with a sharp focus. "They're trying to get everyone out before the pirates breach the bay. We need to move fast." Jason felt the weight of the device on his arm pulsing, as if responding to the urgency in the air. He had no idea what power it held or how it might be used, but he knew he couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands. As they reached the entrance to the shuttle bay, Zala waved her arm toward a small group of engineers working to stabilize one of the shuttles. "We're taking that one," she shouted, pointing to a sleek transport vessel positioned in the corner of the bay. It had a streamlined design, its surface glinting under the emergency lights, and it looked almost alive. The pair dashed forward, and Jason felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. Perhaps they could escape this nightmare after all. But as they reached the shuttle, a loud explosion echoed behind them, shaking the floor and sending dust swirling into the air. "Get inside, now," Zala barked, shoving Jason toward the open hatch. He scrambled inside, heart racing, and quickly strapped himself into one of the seats, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped the armrests. Zala followed closely behind, closing the hatch just as another explosion rocked the shuttle bay. "Hold on," she yelled, her voice steady amid the chaos. She moved swiftly to the control panel, her fingers flying over the buttons as she initiated the launch sequence. "Are we going to make it?" Jason asked, trying to keep his fear at bay. He could hear the distant sounds of battle, the blaster fire and shouts of the pirates as they breached the outer defenses. "Just trust me," Zala replied, her eyes focused on the screen in front of her. "I've done this 100 times. We just need to get the engines warmed up and break through the docking clamps." Jason watched as the lights on the control panel flickered to life. The ship's systems began to hum with energy, and he felt a surge of anticipation. They might actually escape. Suddenly, the shuttle shook violently as another explosion rocked the bay. Jason braced himself against the seat, his heart pounding. He glanced toward the small window beside him, and his stomach dropped as he saw the chaotic scene outside. Pirates were pouring into the shuttle bay, their weapons drawn, faces twisted in excitement at the prospect of capturing their prey. Come on," Zala urged, her voice tense. "Just a few more seconds." Jason's eyes darted around the shuttle, searching for anything that could help them. He spotted a small compartment beside him and opened it, finding a stash of weapons and equipment. He grabbed a blaster and a couple of energy packs, quickly loading his weapon. "I'm ready," he shouted, feeling a rush of adrenaline. "Good thinking," Zola replied, glancing over her shoulder at him. "Just be prepared to fight if we need to." The engines roared to life, the vibrations reverberating through the shuttle as Zola pressed a few more buttons. Launching in 3, 2, 1. As she pressed the final button, the shuttle lurched forward, breaking free from the docking clamps. Jason felt a surge of relief wash over him, but it was short-lived as the alarms blared louder, warning them of incoming threats. "Get us out of here," Jason shouted, heart racing. "Working on it," Zola replied, her focus unwavering. She maneuvered the shuttle with practiced precision, dodging debris and incoming fire as they shot out into the vastness of space. The view outside was both breathtaking and terrifying. Stars twinkled against the backdrop of darkness, but the chaos of the station and the approaching pirate ships loomed in the distance. Jason felt a mix of awe and fear wash over him. They were in the heart of the galaxy, and yet they were under siege. Suddenly, alarms blared again, indicating that they were being pursued. Jason turned to see a larger pirate ship, a hulking mass of metal and weaponry, firing directly at them. "They're coming for us," he exclaimed, gripping the edge of his seat. "Hold on," Zala shouted, pulling the controls hard to the right. The shuttle spun gracefully, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts that shot past them. The ship jolted, and Jason's stomach lurched as they veered through the debris of the station. "Can you shake them?" Jason asked, his heart pounding as he looked back at the pursuing ship, which was gaining on them. "I'm trying," Zola replied, her determination palpable. She flipped switches and pressed buttons, working to increase their speed. The shuttle shuddered under the strain, but Zala remained calm and focused. "We just need a little more distance." Just then, A bright light erupted from behind them, illuminating the darkness of space. Jason turned to see the pirate ship firing its cannons, the blasts lighting up the void. "They're not giving up," he yelled, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I know," Zola snapped, her expression fierce. "But neither are we." She pulled another lever, and the shuttle surged forward, engines roaring as they accelerated into the vastness of space. Jason clutched his blaster tightly, heart racing as they darted through the stars. The pirate ship followed closely, its cannons firing relentlessly. "Zola, what's the plan?" Jason asked, glancing at the control panel as lights flashed ominously. "We can't outrun them forever." Zola's brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to find a way to disable their ship. If we can damage their engines, we might have a chance to escape." Jason's mind raced. "But how? We're not equipped for a direct fight." Zola grinned, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "We'll use what we have. The shuttle's got a few tricks up its sleeve. Watch this." She flipped another switch, and Jason felt the ship's systems hum with newfound energy. "Brace yourself," she warned, and with that, she launched the shuttle into a sharp dive, cutting through the pirate ship's line of fire. Jason felt a rush of exhilaration as they plunged toward a nearby asteroid field. The rocks spun in a chaotic dance, and Zola expertly maneuvered the shuttle through the dangerous terrain. The pirate ship hesitated, its crew clearly unsure about pursuing them into the maze of asteroids. "Now's our chance," Zola exclaimed, taking advantage of their momentary reprieve. "If we can lure them into the field, we might be able to lose them." Jason nodded, adrenaline pumping through his veins as they zipped through the floating rocks. The asteroid field was treacherous, but it offered a glimmer of hope. They darted and weaved between the massive boulders, Jason feeling the weight of the blaster in his hands, ready for anything. Behind them, the pirate ship rode into the field, determination etched on its hull. "They're not backing down," Jason shouted, glancing back at the monstrous vessel as it pursued them relentlessly. "Just keep an eye on them," Zola replied, her focus unwavering as she guided the shuttle with deft precision. "We need to get them in the right position." Suddenly, an asteroid loomed large ahead of them. Zola swerved to the right, and Jason's heart raced as he held his breath, bracing for impact. The shuttle barely missed the rock, but the pirate ship wasn't so lucky. It clipped the edge of the asteroid, the collision sending debris flying in all directions. "Did we get them?" Jason asked, his eyes wide with excitement. "Not yet," Zola replied, pushing the shuttle to its limits as they continued to weave through the field. "But we're wearing them down." The pirate ship continued to give chase, but its movements became erratic as it struggled to maintain control amidst the chaos of the asteroids. Jason's heart raced, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through him. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, Jason suddenly noticed something glowing faintly in the depths of the asteroid field. "Zola, look," he shouted, pointing. "What is that?" She squinted, her brow furrowing as she spotted the faint light. "I don't know, but we should check it out. It might give us an advantage." Zola piloted the shuttle toward the glowing object, carefully maneuvering between the asteroids. As they drew closer, Jason's eyes widened in disbelief. It was a derelict spaceship, its hull battered and scarred, but the soft glow emanated from a device mounted on its side. "Can we salvage anything?" Jason asked, feeling a surge of hope. "Let's find out," Zola replied, her voice filled with determination. She brought the shuttle to a halt beside the derelict ship, and they both peered out the window. The faint light pulsed rhythmically, almost inviting them closer. "It looks like it's still operational," Zola said, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "If we can get aboard, we might find something we can use against the pirates." Jason nodded, his mind racing. "Let's do it." They quickly secured their gear and readied themselves for what lay ahead. Zola activated the shuttle's docking clamp, securing their vessel to the derelict ship. The hatch opened, and they stepped into the unknown. As they boarded the old vessel, Jason felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with uncertainty. The interior was dimly lit, and the air was thick with the smell of rust and age. The walls were lined with strange technology, reminiscent of the advanced systems on the Med Bay station but older, with a touch of decay. "Stay alert," Zola whispered, her eyes scanning the shadows. "We don't know what we might find here." They moved cautiously through the cramped corridors, the eerie silence amplifying every sound. Jason felt the device on his arm pulsing faintly, almost as if it were responding to the remnants of the ship's technology. "Over here," Zola called, pointing to a control room at the end of the hallway. They rushed inside, and Jason's eyes widened as he took in the sight. The room was cluttered with old consoles and displays, but one terminal stood out, a large control panel, still illuminated, its screen flickering with life. "This could be it," Zola exclaimed, rushing to the terminal. Jason joined her, peering over her shoulder as she began to work the controls. "What can you do?" "I'm going to see if I can access the ship's systems," she replied, her fingers flying over the keys. "If we can get this thing online, we might be able to use it to disable the pirate ship or even escape." As Zola worked, Jason's gaze wandered around the control room, feeling an inexplicable connection to the ship and its history. He could sense the remnants of battles fought and lives lived within its walls. But the moment was fleeting, as Zola suddenly cursed under her breath. "What's wrong?" Jason asked, leaning closer. "It's locked," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. "I need a bypass code to unlock the systems." Jason felt a surge of determination. "Is there a way we can find it?" "Maybe," Zola replied, her eyes narrowing. "There should be logs or archives somewhere on this ship. If we can locate the main data core, we might be able to retrieve the code." "Let's do it," Jason said, feeling the urgency of their situation weighing heavily on him. They needed to move quickly before the pirates tracked them down. Together, they searched the ship, weaving through the darkened hallways and rooms filled with long-forgotten technology. The silence was oppressive, and every creak of the ship sent shivers down Jason's spine. Finally, they reached a small chamber at the rear of the ship. Inside, they found a data core, its surface glowing softly. "This must be it," Zola said, excitement creeping into her voice. As they approached, Jason noticed the device on his arm pulsing more intensely. "Zola, I think this thing is reacting to the core," he said, glancing at her. "Interesting," she replied, studying the core closely. "If we can connect your device to this, it might give us the access we need." Jason hesitated for a moment, but then nodded, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. "Let's do it." Zola carefully moved to connect his device to the data core. As she did, a surge of energy flowed through him, and the room filled with light. The walls seemed to hum with life, and he felt a connection forming between him and the ship's ancient technology. Suddenly, the terminal flickered to life, displaying a series of codes and data streams. "Yes," Zola exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "I've got it." With newfound urgency, Zola entered the bypass code into the terminal. The screens began to process, and Jason felt the device on his arm respond to the energy flowing through the core. It pulsed with intensity, and Jason could feel a strange bond forming between them. Come on," Zola urged, her fingers flying across the console as the systems began to unlock. Finally, the terminal chimed with a confirmation, and Zola let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "We're in." With quick movements, Zola navigated through the ship's systems, accessing its weaponry and defenses. Jason watched in awe as she activated several dormant systems, reconfiguring them for their use. "Okay, we need to prepare for the pirates," Zola said, glancing back at Jason. "If they find us here, we'll be sitting ducks." Jason nodded, gripping his blaster tightly. "What do we do?" Zola smirked, her eyes gleaming with determination. "We're going to turn the tables on them. This ship may be old, but it's got firepower we can use." Just as she finished speaking, The alarms on the ship blared to life, warning them of incoming threats. "They're here," Jason shouted, his heart racing. "Get to your station," Zola commanded, her voice firm. "We need to prepare to defend ourselves." Jason hurried to a nearby weapons console, loading more energy packs into his blaster. He felt a surge of determination as he prepared for what lay ahead. They were no longer fleeing. They were ready to fight back. "Prepare the weapons," Zola shouted, her fingers dancing across the controls. "We're going to give them a warm welcome." As the pirate ship approached, Jason felt a thrill of adrenaline. They were no longer helpless victims. They had the element of surprise, and he was determined to use it to their advantage. With Zala at the helm and Jason ready to fight, they'd braced themselves for the confrontation ahead. The stakes were high, and they were ready to show the pirates that this was their ship, their fight, and they wouldn't go down without a struggle. The battle for their survival was only just beginning, but together, they were ready to face whatever came their way. The counterattack. As the ship's alarms blared, Jason felt his heart racing with anticipation. The control room was alive with the hum of technology, and Zola moved with an air of confidence that bolstered Jason's resolve. They had a chance, not just to escape, but to fight back against the pirates who sought to take everything from them. "Jason, can you handle the weapon systems?" Zola called out as she typed furiously at the console. "We need to be ready to fire at a moment's notice." "Absolutely," Jason replied, stepping over to the weapons console. He examined the controls, his heart pounding. There were several weapon systems at their disposal, from energy cannons to missile launchers, all part of the derelict ship's arsenal. He couldn't believe the power they now wielded. "What do you want me to target?" Zala glanced at the screens, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Keep an eye on their approach. If they get too close, we'll need to disable their engines. Otherwise, focus on their weapon systems. Let's take away their firepower." Jason nodded, adrenaline surging through him. He activated the targeting systems, a series of crosshairs appearing on the display as he scanned for the incoming pirate ship. "I see them," he shouted, pointing at the screen. "They're gaining on us." "Good. Prepare to fire on my mark," Zala commanded, her fingers flying over the controls as she maneuvered the ship. The derelict vessel shuddered beneath them, responding to Zala's commands as she engaged the thrusters, sending them deeper into the heart of the asteroid field. The pirate ship loomed closer, a massive behemoth of metal, its hull pockmarked with scars from past battles. Jason's breath caught in his throat as the enemy vessel opened fire, bright bolts of energy streaking through the void, illuminating the darkness of space. "Hold steady," Zola yelled, her voice steady despite the chaos. She piloted their ship with grace, dodging blasts and weaving through the debris of the asteroid field. "Now, Jason, fire." Jason's finger hovered over the trigger. With a deep breath, he squeezed it, unleashing a bolt of energy that shot forth from their ship. The blast struck the pirate vessel, causing it to shudder and veer slightly off course. Jason felt a rush of triumph, but quickly refocused. "Nice shot," Zala shouted, a grin breaking through her tension. "Keep firing." As Jason continued to unleash shot after shot, he felt a newfound confidence rising within him. Each blast connected with the pirate ship, and with every explosion, he felt as though he were reclaiming his life, fighting back against the unknown that had turned his world upside down. But the pirates weren't giving up easily. The enemy ship retaliated with its own barrage of energy blasts, the shields flaring and flickering under the assault. Jason gritted his teeth as he worked the controls, directing their fire and trying to anticipate the pirates' movements. "Zala, they're targeting our shields," he warned, noticing the bright flashes against the hull. "We need to reinforce them." "I'm on it," Zola replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. "But it's a balancing act. If I divert too much power to the shields, we won't have enough for the weapons." "Can't we split the power?" Jason suggested, his mind racing. Zala shot him a quick glance, appreciation flickering in her eyes. Good thinking. I'll do that now. Just keep firing. With renewed determination, Jason returned his focus to the pirate ship, the enemy vessel looming larger as it drew nearer. "They're coming in hot," he shouted, the urgency of the situation sinking in. "We need to end this." "Agreed," Zola replied, her voice fierce. "Let's give them a taste of what we've got." With the ship now fortified with a balance of weapons and shields, Jason felt a surge of hope. The energy coursing through the ship seemed to synchronize with the device on his arm, pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost alive. He sensed an ancient power resonating within him, intertwining with the very systems they were using to fight back. "Prepare for a broadside," Zola commanded, adjusting their position to fire all weapons simultaneously. "Locking on," Jason yelled, adrenaline surging as he aimed at the pirate ship's weapon systems. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The ship erupted with energy as their weapons fired in unison, a barrage of bright bolts striking the pirate ship with overwhelming force. Explosions erupted across its hull, the enemy vessel shuddering violently as it struggled to maintain control. "Yes, direct hit," Jason shouted, elation flooding through him. The pirates were losing their momentum, and for the first time, he felt as though they might actually win this battle. But as the pirate ship began to falter, Zala's expression turned serious. "They're still in the fight. We need to finish them off before they regroup." Jason nodded, a steely determination replacing his earlier elation. "What's the plan?" "We're going to disable their engines. If we can immobilize them, we can force them to surrender or scuttle their ship," Zava said, her focus unwavering. "Get ready to fire on my command." With renewed urgency, Jason watched the pirate ship as it tried to reposition itself, but it was too late. Zola had already set their trajectory. "Now," she shouted. Jason squeezed the trigger, sending another bolt of energy streaking toward the pirate ship's engines. The shot connected, and a massive explosion erupted, sending debris spiraling into space. "Got it," Jason cheered, but his excitement was short-lived as he noticed something unexpected. The pirate ship began to break apart, the hull fracturing under the pressure of the blast. "Zala, they're going down," he exclaimed, shock coursing through him. "Yes, but they won't go quietly," Zala replied, her voice steady. "They're likely self-destruct to avoid capture. We need to get clear." Panic surged within Jason. "How long do we have?" "Less than a minute," Zala said, her hands flying over the controls as she maneuvered their ship away from the debris. "Hold on." With a swift movement, she engaged the thrusters, and Jason braced himself as they shot forward, dodging pieces of the disintegrating pirate ship. The sight of the massive vessel breaking apart was awe-inspiring, but the danger wasn't over yet. "Keep an eye on the scanners," Zola commanded, her expression fierce. "We need to make sure no other ships are following us." Jason nodded, glancing at the readings on the console. The space around them felt eerily calm, but he knew that could change at any moment. "I don't see any other ships yet," he replied, his voice tense. Just as he spoke, a warning light flashed on the console, and the alarms blared again. "What is it?" Zola asked, her tone sharp. "Multiple contacts incoming," Jason shouted, his heart racing. "Looks like reinforcements," Zola cursed under her breath. "We need to make a decision, and fast. We can't afford another fight, not after this one." Jason felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. "But where do we go? We can't just run aimlessly." "Let's head to the nearest uninhabited planet," Zola suggested, her voice steady. "We'll lay low, regroup, and figure out our next steps. We've got to get that device somewhere safe." "Right," Jason agreed, feeling a sense of urgency. "Setting a course now." As Zola plotted their escape route, Jason felt a mix of fear and determination. They had survived the encounter with the pirates, but he knew the battle was far from over. The device on his arm pulsed gently, a reminder of the ancient power he now carried and the responsibility that came with it. Course set, Jason announced, feeling a surge of hope. Let's get out of here. Zala engaged the thrusters, and the ship surged forward, breaking free from the remnants of the battle. Jason watched as the debris of the pirate ship faded into the distance, a sense of victory swelling within him. They had fought back against impossible odds and come out on top. But as they raced toward the uninhabited planet, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The device on his arm was still a mystery, and he knew that many would come seeking it. He exchanged a glance with Zala, a silent agreement passing between them. They would face whatever came next together. As they entered the atmosphere of the uninhabited planet, Jason took a deep breath. They had survived the encounter, but the real challenge lay ahead. Together, they would uncover the secrets of the device, discover its true potential, and confront the forces that threatened not just their lives, but the balance of power in the galaxy. With determination in their hearts and an unbreakable bond forming between them, Jason and Zala braced for the next chapter of their adventure. They were no longer just survivors, they were warriors, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The secrets of the device. As the shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the uninhabited planet, Jason felt a sense of relief wash over him. The chaos of the pirate attack faded into the distance, and the rugged landscape below promised a temporary sanctuary. Jagged mountains loomed on the horizon, interspersed with lush valleys and shimmering bodies of water. It was a stark contrast to the sterile confines of the space station they had just escaped. Zala maneuvered the ship skillfully, navigating through the clouds until they broke through the thick mist. "I'll find a safe place to land," she said, her focus unwavering as she scanned the terrain below. Jason peered out the window, excitement bubbling within him. "Look at that. It's beautiful." He pointed at a sprawling meadow that glistened under the light of the distant sun. "Yeah, but beauty can hide dangers," Zala replied, her tone pragmatic. "We need to keep our guard up." As the shuttle approached the ground, they spotted a clearing near a cluster of trees, surrounded by a rocky outcrop. Zala deftly piloted the ship into the space, the engines roaring as they touched down softly on the earth. The finality of their landing brought with it a mixture of relief and anxiety. They were safe for now, but the threats were far from over. "Let's assess the situation," Zala said, immediately springing into action. She unbuckled her harness and headed toward the control panel to secure the shuttle. Jason followed closely behind, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "Should we set up a perimeter?" Jason asked, feeling a sense of urgency. "We don't know if the pirates will follow us here." "Good idea," Zala replied, already pulling out her gear. She activated the ship's external sensors, which would provide them with alerts of any approaching ships or creatures. "I'll set up the perimeter alarms. You check our supplies and make sure we have everything we need for the next few hours." Jason nodded, diving into the cargo hold. He rummaged through their supplies, energy packs, rations, medical kits, and weapons, everything they had managed to gather from the derelict ship. The weight of the situation settled heavily on his shoulders as he realized how little they had. They were on a foreign planet, and their fate hinged on the power of the device strapped to his arm. Once he had compiled a small inventory, he joined Zala outside the shuttle. She was busy configuring the sensors around their landing site. "We've got about 20 minutes before the perimeter is fully operational," she informed him. "Let's use that time to gather our thoughts and figure out our next move." Jason took a deep breath, the fresh air filling his lungs. It was different from the sterile atmosphere of the station. It felt alive. "Right. We need to understand what that device is and why it's so important." Zala nodded, her expression serious. "The key to the ancient power, as I suspect, might be tied to your regenerative abilities. The way it responded during the battle. I think it's more than just a tool. It might be a part of something larger." As they settled down at a nearby rock outcrop, Jason looked at the device on his arm. It was sleek and metallic, pulsating faintly, almost as if it were alive. "What do you think it unlocks?" he asked, curiosity overtaking him. I wish I knew, Zala replied, her eyes narrowing in thought. It could be anything, an ancient weapon, a lost technology, or even a way to control something far more powerful. Whatever it is, we can't let it fall into the wrong hands. Jason felt the weight of her words. But how do we find out what it unlocks? Zala leaned closer, her expression intent. We'll need to examine it further. If we can get access to the ship's databases, we might find clues. But we also need to be cautious. If it truly is tied to ancient power, there could be others looking for it, those who wouldn't hesitate to kill for it. Jason nodded, his heart racing at the thought. They had survived the initial battle, but he knew that every moment spent on this planet put them at risk. So what's our plan? First, we gather more information, Zala said, glancing around the area to ensure they were alone. We need to find a place to hide the shuttle and establish a base of operations. Then we can dig deeper into the device's history and figure out its connection to this place. Sounds good, Jason agreed, already feeling a sense of purpose return to him. They quickly set about their tasks, moving swiftly yet cautiously as they secured their temporary refuge. After a thorough search, they found a small cave nestled among the rocky outcrop. It was dark and slightly damp, but it provided ample cover. Jason felt a shiver run down his spine as they stepped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. I'll set up the perimeter sensors here, Zala said, her voice echoing softly in the confined space. She began to arrange the equipment, her hands moving efficiently as she prepared for any potential threats. While she worked, Jason pulled out the device once more, holding it up to inspect. The surface was smooth, reflecting the dim light of the cave, and the faint pulsing seemed to synchronize with his heartbeat. He recalled the moments during the fight when it had reacted, unleashing energy that had turned the tide in their favor. "What are you?" he whispered, more to himself than to the device. "Talking to it won't help," Zala said with a teasing grin, glancing over her shoulder. "But I appreciate your optimism." Jason chuckled, grateful for the moment of levity. Maybe it just needs a little encouragement. Zala finished setting up the sensors and moved closer to him, peering at the device. "We need to find a way to unlock its potential," she said seriously. "There must be something we can do, some way to tap into the power it holds." "Like what?" Jason asked, intrigued. "Perhaps we can attempt to connect it to the ship's systems," Zala suggested, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "If the device is as advanced as I think it is, it might have a connection to the ship's database. We could access its knowledge, maybe even unlock its secrets." "That sounds risky," Jason replied, feeling a knot form in his stomach. "What if it reacts unpredictably?" Zala shrugged, a confident smile gracing her lips. "What choice do we have? We can't afford to sit idly by, hoping nothing happens. We need to be proactive." Jason weighed her words. He knew she was right. Staying passive could mean their doom. "Okay, let's try it," he agreed, determination settling in. They returned to the shuttle, Zala working on the console to bring the ship back online. The dim lights flickered to life, and Jason's heart raced as he approached the control panel. He connected the device to one of the ship's terminals, watching as the screens came alive with data. "Here we go," Zala said, typing commands swiftly. "Let's see what you're hiding." The device pulsed more intensely as Zala initiated the connection, and Jason felt a rush of energy flow through him. The walls of the shuttle seemed to hum with life, resonating with an ancient power that lay dormant within the device. Processing, connection established, the terminal beat, and Jason's breath caught in his throat. Suddenly, the screens flickered, revealing ancient symbols and images of stars, planets, and intricate machinery. Jason leaned closer, captivated by the unfolding visuals. "What is this?" he asked, awe-struck. "I think it's a map," Zala said, squinting at the screen. "A map to something powerful." Jason's pulse quickened as he examined the glowing images. The device seemed to have unlocked a wealth of information, revealing locations across the galaxy, some familiar, others completely alien. But why would it lead us here? He wondered aloud. Maybe it's a guide, Zala suggested, her voice filled with excitement. A way to find what we need to understand the power within it. Look, there are coordinates. We can follow them. Before Jason could respond, an alert sounded from the perimeter sensors, breaking their focus. What now? He asked, anxiety prickling at the back of his mind. Zala's expression shifted to one of concern. We have company, she said, moving quickly to the sensor display. It looks like more ships are entering the atmosphere. We need to hide the shuttle and ourselves. Let's move, Jason said, adrenaline pumping through him as they quickly made their way out of the shuttle and back to the cave. They ducked into the shadows as the sound of engines rolled overhead, the vibrations echoing through the rocky terrain. Jason's heart raced as he crouched down, his mind racing with thoughts of the pirates and what they would do if they found them. What do we do now? He whispered, fear creeping into his voice. We wait and observe, Zala replied, her eyes narrowed as she peered out of the cave entrance. We need to gather as much information as we can without being seen. If it's the pirates, we need to know their numbers and what they plan to do. Jason nodded, trying to steady his breathing. They had come so far, and he couldn't let fear control him now. They had to be strong and smart. As the minutes passed, the sounds of the ships grew louder, and Jason felt a knot form in his stomach. They were close, too close. What if they come this way? He asked, anxiety tingling his voice. Zala turned to him, her expression resolute. Then we'll be ready. We've faced worse. Just remember, we're in this together. With a deep breath, Jason focused on the task at hand. He would do everything in his power to protect them both. They were on the brink of something monumental, and he couldn't afford to let fear cloud his judgment. As the shadows of the ships passed overhead, Jason caught a glimpse of the pirate insignia emblazoned on their hulls. They're searching for us, he whispered, his heart racing. We need to be ready for anything. Zala nodded, her jaw set with determination. If they're searching for us, it means they know we're here. We have to stay hidden, but we also need to plan our next move. The tension in the air was palpable as they waited, the sounds of the pirates' ships drawing closer. Jason could feel the weight of the device on his arm pulsing softly, almost as if it were aware of the imminent danger. He exchanged a glance with Zala, and in that moment, he knew they would face whatever came next together. This was just the beginning of their journey, and together they would uncover the secrets of the device and navigate the perils that lay ahead. With the pirates closing in and the weight of ancient power resting in his hands, Jason felt a fierce determination rise within him. They were no longer mere survivors. They were on the brink of discovering something greater, something that could change the fate of the galaxy. And he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.